There are certain moments in golf that don't just stay on the course. They leave the fairway, they leave the clubhouse, and they explode straight into the hearts of fans. This was one of those moments. Because when Scottie Scheffler, the calmest man in the biggest storms, looked at those PGA pin positions and called them absurd, it felt like something deeper had been exposed. Not just about one round, not just about one setup, but about what golf is supposed to be when the pressure is highest and the world is watching. Was this the number one player in the world telling the truth nobody else wanted to say out loud? Or was it the kind of comment that changes how fans see you, especially when things suddenly get difficult? That's the part that made this story hit differently. Because what happened next wasn't just a debate about pins. It became a debate about toughness, honesty, respect, and the fine line between frustration and fairness. And by the end of this story, you may not just see Scottie differently. You may see championship golf differently too. And if you truly love golf, if this game means something to you, and if you enjoy stories that remind us why this sport gets under our skin in the best and worst ways, then subscribe and become part of this golf family. Because here, we don't just watch golf. We feel it. Scottie Scheffler is not the kind of player who normally gives the internet a reason to explode. That's part of what made this so powerful. He's usually measured, controlled, almost machine-like in the way he carries himself. No wasted emotion, no drama for the cameras. So when a player like that steps up after a major round and says, basically, these pins were too far, too severe, too close to the edge of what makes sense, people listen. And not just because he's Scottie. Because when a player that steady sounds genuinely bothered, you know something on that course got his attention. After round 2 at the PGA Championship at Aronimink, Scheffler said, most of the pins today were, kind of absurd, and described one location as being right on top of the spine of the green. He also called it the hardest set of pin positions he'd seen since joining the tour, even compared with U.S. Opens and Oakmont. Golf Channel Yahoo Sports. Now right there, the golf world split in two. One side heard honesty. They heard the best player on the planet saying out loud what a lot of players probably mutter under their breath. That sometimes a championship setup stops asking for great golf and starts demanding survival. That there's a difference between tough and theatrical, between challenging and cute, between rewarding precision and just daring players to fail. But the other side, they heard complaining. And in golf, especially major championship golf, fans have very little patience for complaints. Because this sport worships grit, it respects suffering, it romanticizes the grind. So when the world number one says the pins were too much, a lot of people don't hear detail. They hear weakness. But here's the part nobody talks about. Scottie didn't actually say the setup was unfair. In fact, he said the opposite. He made it clear that unfair would be wind blowing balls off greens. And he said he hadn't seen that. He even said he loves hard tests, and that golf is the hardest game in the world. That matters. Because his point wasn't, I got beat, so blame the course. His point was more subtle. He was talking about how tournaments can control scoring simply by using pin positions, and that changes the nature of the test. Golf Channel HIDC. And that's where this story got interesting. Because if Scottie was just whining, this would have died in 5 minutes. But it didn't die. It spread. Fans argued. Media reacted. Other players weighed in. Justin Thomas basically acknowledged the same concern in his own way, saying there's a point where green speed and exact placement can combine to create spots where a ball just won't stay. Chris Gooderup, who actually shot one of the best rounds of the day, still said the setup was tough to make birdies on. So suddenly this wasn't just Scottie throwing a fit. This was a bigger conversation about how major championships should challenge the best players in the world. And this is where everything changed. Because fans online didn't stop to separate frustration from excuse. Some of them went straight for the legacy angle. They said Tiger would never say that. They said majors are supposed to bite back. They said everybody had the same pins, the same wind, the same greens, the same cold morning. One reaction basically asked, does he think he's playing a different golf course than everyone else? Another said pros complain whenever the course gets a chance to fight back. That reaction was real, and it was harsh. Now let's be honest. That criticism lands because golf fans hold elite players to a brutal standard. If you're number one in the world, people don't just expect greatness from your clubs. They expect perfection from your words. You are allowed to struggle. You are not allowed to sound like you're bothered by the struggle. That is the emotional contract fans place on superstars. And Scottie, whether fair or not, ran right into that wall. But wait till you hear what makes this even more human. This wasn't some meltdown after an ugly collapse. He wasn't 10 over par and blaming everyone else. He had opened with 67, followed with 71, and was still right there in the tournament, only a few shots back after round 2. That's why the moment felt so raw. He wasn't broken. He wasn't out of it. He was still in the fight, which means those comments came from someone trying to solve the course in real time, not someone trying to explain away failure. And if you've ever played golf seriously, even at your own level, you know exactly why that resonates. There are days when you can accept bad swings. You can accept nerves. You can accept wind, cold, pressure, and rough. But what drives golfers crazy is when it feels like a really good shot still has nowhere reasonable to finish. That's where the sport becomes emotional. Because golfers can live with being beaten. What's hard to live with is feeling like the target itself stopped making sense. That's why so many real golf fans quietly sided with Scottie, even if they didn't love the wording. They know the difference. They know that tucked pins can expose brilliance, but there's also a point where the setup starts flirting with gimmick. And major championship golf should never feel gimmicky. It should feel merciless, yes. Demanding, yes. But not random. Still, there's another side to this, and it deserves respect too. A major is not supposed to feel comfortable. It is supposed to ask terrifying questions. Can you land on the exact shelf? Can you flight it under pressure? Can you hit 20 feet and still accept that 20 feet is a win? That's why fans love majors. Because they strip players down to nerve and control. So when the best player in the world says a pin is absurd, some fans hear him, resisting the very thing that makes championship golf unforgettable. That tension is why this story matters. Because it reveals something beautiful about golf. This game is never just physical. It's philosophical. Every brutal setup asks a hidden question. What do we want to reward? Pure execution? Patience? Creativity? Damage control? Courage? A little bit of all of it. Scottie's comments didn't just criticize a few flags. They forced people to answer what kind of major they actually want. But here's the part that stayed with me the most. Scottie didn't sound arrogant. He sounded like a golfer. A real one. A guy standing in that strange place every player knows, where you respect the challenge, hate the challenge, and are still strangely grateful for it. That's golf. That's why this game gets inside us. You can love the test and still say, man, that was ridiculous. You can compete with full heart and still walk off thinking, what exactly was I supposed to do there? And maybe that's why this whole thing hit such a nerve. Because Scheffler accidentally said out loud what so many players, elite or average, feel when golf exposes them. Not anger, not surrender, just that raw, frustrated honesty that comes when the game feels 1 inch steeper than reason. And when fans exploded, they weren't only reacting to Scottie. They were reacting to their own view of the sport, their own heroes, their own rules for what toughness should sound like. So in the end, this wasn't just about absurd pins. It was about whether golf's biggest stars are allowed to be human in public. It was about whether honesty makes a player more relatable or less admirable. And it was about whether a major championship should punish everything except perfection, or still leave room for great shots to be rewarded like great shots. That's why stories like this matter. Because golf is never only about the scorecard. It's about character under pressure. It's about what players reveal when the course stops cooperating. Scottie Scheffler gave us one of those moments. Some fans saw weakness. Some saw truth. Maybe the real answer is that they saw both, because that's what makes this game so real. It humbles everyone, even the best in the world, and sometimes the most revealing shot isn't the one a player hits. It's the sentence he says after. So what do you think? Was Scottie right to call those pins absurd, or should the world number one stay silent and just deal with it? Drop your take in the comments, and if you love golf stories that go deeper than the leaderboard, stay with this channel. We've got plenty more coming.